Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Lisa, the Business Development Manager at Charity Digital, and I will be your host for today, which is our last part of our webinar series about the Microsoft 365 subscriptions. I am joined today by Joel Hogan and later on by Siv Anantakumar, our IT Manager. And before I hand over to Joel, I'll go over a little bit of introduction about what today's session is going to be about. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's really good to have you and a warm welcome to you. You can access the first and the second part of our webinar series on demand on our website so that it can help you understand everything you need to know about Microsoft 365 subscriptions, how to get validated, etc. It's really good to have you back. If you have attended the two previous sessions, I think it was 2 weeks ago and another, well, last month probably, we had a really good time with Joel answering all of your questions, and we're really looking forward to answering more of these today. Today's session is really going to be about, making the most of the Microsoft 365 subscriptions and really understand how you can maximize that. So like I said, Joel Hogan is our cloud account manager here and our Microsoft 365 specialist at Charity Digital. And Siv is our IT manager, and they'll be looking forward to helping you with all of your questions. Obviously, let us know where you are joining us from, what you are looking forward to learning today. And it's really good to hear, especially about how how you've been since the beginning of the year and how the Microsoft 365 changes and opportunities is going for your organizations. Obviously, a few house rules. You can be sure that this session will be recorded as the first and second part of the series. So we will post the recordings along with the slides and any other resources online, probably a week after today. You can also have access to the closed captions. I think it's a bottom at the right of your screen next to the record button at the bottom. We will leave some time to answer all the questions. That's really important for us to provide that platform for all of you to share everything. So please do not hesitate to pop your questions into the Q&A sections. That's two speech bubbles overlapping one another. For everything else, you can use the chat sections, and we really are looking forward to seeing the chat buzzing like the two previous times, having a look at your experiences, your tips, what has worked for you using Microsoft 365, etc. In the question section, there's also a very cool feature called the upvote button, so you can vote for your favorite questions and can put it at the top so we can answer it earlier. Obviously, we will ask you for a little bit of feedback at the end of the session, which should last an hour in total, about 20-25 minutes presentation, and then the rest for all of your questions. At the end of that, at around 2 p.m., we will hand over for the rest of the session, at the end of the session rather, and we will prompt you for feedback. So if you have a couple of minutes to spare, we'll be very happy to hear what you thought of the sessions. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Joel. Hello, Joel.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for your warm welcome, as usual.
Hopefully we'll have a very good time, and looking forward to all of the questions for later.
Yeah, me too. Just like to say hello to everyone again. So yeah, my name's Joel, as per the picture and my name on there. Like to welcome you all back. For those who've attended the previous sessions, and for anyone new, welcome. And please feel free to look back at the previous sessions as well if there's anything that's useful for you in terms of choosing your 365 subscription or even getting validated for it. We have some great content there. So today, with in mind that I believe we'll have a really good mix of people, various levels, which is why I got the help of my IT manager, Siv, here today to help me with some of our questions. But I really want to make sure that what we present today can tick the boxes of the questions of people from various levels, from whether you're a complete novice and you just want to learn about 365 to whether you have some really, really cool, interesting questions that, might be a bit technical for some, but we've got the right people here for that one there today. So yeah, just following up from our previous session. So that's our agenda today. So how we can help, what you do now you're validated, how to assign users, where to find your apps, what is beyond the apps, and then some questions there. So today, just a couple little points that we'll go through in terms of what service that we can provide, how to simply set up your users and assign your licenses. And then from there, we have a couple of pre-populated questions there for Civ, just because it would be a nice talking point, just maybe questions you guys may not be asking, but maybe worth knowing. And then there we can go on the Q&A session. So for some of you may or may not know, so in terms of purchasing your Microsoft licenses, you do have the opportunity to purchase them via Charity Digital. So I'll just spend briefly on this, but what that means is that if you do decide to purchase your 365 subscriptions or any other Microsoft Cloud subscriptions via Charity Digital Exchange and Charity Digital, there's some benefits to choosing us. Number one is that we do provide a further discount on some Microsoft Cloud subscriptions. So that's a discount on top of the non-profit rate that you can get directly from Microsoft. It's not all subscriptions, but there are some discounts available, so it may be worth considering, particularly in the time we're in a industry and an area where we do like to save money and pinch the pennies as much as we can. Something that can be overlooked is alternative payment options. So what that means is that there are many charities out there may not even have a debit or credit card, or they may not be comfortable maybe paying the typical means of setting up like a recurring payment. So for example, if you are one of those charities who maybe do have those restrictions, we can offer you perhaps like an alternative option such as paying annually by your invoice instead as well, which can be useful. We're also a first point of contact. So if there are any issues with your 365 account, you can at least contact us first and we can point you in the right direction. Some of the time we may be able to resolve that for you, but if not, then we would refer you on to Microsoft directly. In this case, just to clarify, so we wouldn't be your IT like advisory company or solution provider in that sense, or a technical term, but you're certainly welcome to join us first, contact us first, should I say, and we can point you at least in the right direction where you need to go and provide you the necessary links to raise any queries that you have. And finally, your funds help us. So if you decide to get your subscriptions via Charity Digital, your funds will be subsidized and used to help us spread the word of digital information a lot further. And just to briefly just go over this next couple of slides as well, just to show you how to do it in terms of how to purchase from us. So make sure you have a Charity Digital Exchange account and log into your account as per the slide here, the login button. So the website is charitydigitalexchange.org. And so make sure you log into your organization's account from there. Once you click login, then click on the product catalog and scroll down and you'll see 4 different tiles from Microsoft there. So the one on the left is specifically for Microsoft Cloud subscription. So you click on the orange button there. The other ones, if you are interested, that's for our on-premise licenses in loan, which we have some interesting offers going on those at the moment, if that is of interest to you. So once you click the orange button, you can select any of these options here. So you can only see 4 options there at the moment, but if you can still purchase the licenses you require, even if you've clicked on one link. So for example, if you want Office 365 and Enterprise Mobility Security, you don't need to click on separate orders. Eventually you'll enter a section called the Techsoup Cloud Manager, which is the licensing provisioning system where you can start adding products to your cart, etc. And that's where you can mix and match between various subscriptions. So anyway, click on any of those links. And then from there, click on the Get Offer button. Show that again. So any of those 2 there. And from here, the page is sort of designed for if you're coming across the website for the first time. So it will ask, as you can see there, to make sure you've got a .onmicrosoft.com domain, which if you've been following us through the rest of the series, you should have already by now. Hopefully you've been validated. So that means you can click the continue on your own button. And once here again, it's still a reminder just in case that checking that you do have your .onmicrosoft.com domain validated, which you should do. So you should see a blue link in the second paragraph there, which says Cloud Manager. So if you click on that, take you to this page. And so what you're going to do here is you're going to activate your Cloud Manager portal. So again, this is the portal where you can add 365 and other Microsoft Cloud subscriptions to your cart. It's where you can add payment details for paid licenses, and you can also view your invoices there as well. So is it just this on this first occasion, you just got to set that up, and then in future purchases, you can click straight through without skipping quite a few of these steps. So you click continue to Cloud Manager. Oh, got a bit ahead there. There we go. So you'll receive an email just to activate your Cloud Manager account. So the link is active for 24 hours. So please note that if it needs to be resent, it's only active for 30 minutes. So try and get that done straight away when you do that. Also, this email address, my favorite saying, please ensure you are checking your junk folders just in case, as sometimes our emails can be flagged up. Once you click through that link, you'll be asked to set your password for the account, your password confirmation, and activate it. And once you've done that, here's a brief view of the Techsoup Cloud Manager here. So from this page, as you can see there, you can see add to cart on a few of the licenses there as well. I won't go deep into this part, as you know, we want to make the most out of your subscriptions, but it's from this point where you can start adding 365 subscriptions to your cart and then use the online checkout to make payment or complete the order as well. You can see tag there, you can check your invoices as well if you need to. Okay, so in the scenario now, so you've purchased some licenses via Charity Exchange. You're now going to log in back into your recently created 365 admin portal. Should look something a little bit similar to like this. So you're going to be in the admin center and you've got two sections circled here. So the one down below, which is the admin center, is what you're going to click on first. The one at the top there with the 3 rows of 3, you're going to come back to later. So once you click on the admin portal, the next step is you're going to want to start adding users for each of the licenses that you've purchased. So if you've purchased, say, 4 business standard licenses, because you've got 4 people working with yourselves or yourself and 3 others, you want to create add a user for each. So you're going to click add a user, fill out their names. So as you can see there, I've just put test. Your domain there would be your onmicrosoft.com address for the time being. You can set the settings of how you want to create the password, how the user is going to activate their user account. Now, as an important point, creating a user account does not mean they have access to the licenses straight away. You actually have to assign them a license as well. So after this section, you click next. Once you click next, there'll be, oh, missing a slide there. Okay, there's a section, once you click next, you'll see an option where you can actually assign, it will have a list of licenses available, and that's where you can assign it to the user there. And then you can complete setting up the account from there. Sorry, I missed a slide and that should have added that one. But anyway, once you've done that, and once you've assigned your user account its own license, if you return back to the page I showed you earlier with the 3 rows of 3, that page is actually where you can download or access your Office apps. So you can download them if you've got a feature of your subscription, which has downloadable Office apps, or if you're using web-only apps, so they're all in the cloud, you can access them from there as well. Now I've got a question here, which I'm going to move over to add to Siv there. So the question is adding your own custom domain to 365. Now, custom domain, what that means is, as we know, when we created our 365 admin account, the default was .onmicrosoft.com. You guys may remember from the previous video, I came up with a charity called Kate's Kittens, I believe. So the domain would be kateskittens.onmicrosoft.com. But what happens if you already have your own domain, so kateskittens.com or .org? How would you use that domain within 365? Siv, do you want to elaborate on that one there for me, mate?
Yeah, sure. So most of the time, you would already have a domain name registered somewhere, i.e. to your websites and so forth. And as part of that, you would have something called the DNS panel, where you would go in and configure where the DNS settings are configured. And that's what you're going to need for this section if you wanted to have the custom domain added to your Office 365 account. But before moving on to that, I just wanted to mention something quickly around the MFA, which is the multi-factor authentication.
There we go.
And as part of your setup, Microsoft now as standard enables MFA. So once you set up your tenancy, as per previous webinars from Joel, you would then, your end users would have 14 days to register for MFA, multi-factor authentication. So they need to either register their mobile number or an email address as part of their second registration. So yeah, you need to be keeping on top of that to make sure, because most of the attacks of identity theft, as far as usernames are concerned, can be thwarted if MFA is enabled.
Sure. So it is MFA as a basic standing. That's when lots of not just Microsoft, but other organizations, other logins are now requiring you to enter your mobile phone, and they might send you a code, or they might use an authenticator app, for example, with some organizations. In fact, Microsoft have an authenticator app as well. So is that what you mean by MFA in terms of setting that up?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, either through the app, through the text messages to your mobile phone, or to email addresses as the second method. I've just seen some comments of people saying they're not able to hear me clearly. I'm hoping that this has sort of corrected the issue now.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully that helps that out. And also the great thing is that some of our, it may not have been MFA, or actually it could have been actually, but when in our previous session, we spoke about getting validated on the Microsoft nonprofit portal. And during that process, you actually have to provide your number, and it will get a code to be sent through to proceed with the phone, proceed with the application. So some of our I'd say people who are new to 365 or setting up something like this would have at least a little bit of practice on this already, from a very basic standpoint at least.
Good. And it's good now that Microsoft, they didn't have it enabled as standard, but now if you're a new tenant going into Office 365, the terminology that Microsoft uses, security defaults. So security defaults are now on as standard. So you shouldn't have to do anything, but it's worth for you to check that MFA is enabled for all your end users.
Excellent. It's all about that cybersecurity now in the world we live in. Absolutely.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Now to come back to the domain, the custom domain.
Yes.
So you would have access to your DNS panel, ideally. This is where you would go to configure to add additional DNS records, as they're called. And for that part, you will need to add a text record to verify that you are the owner of the domain. So you would go into your Office 365 admin panel. Under setup, you would find an option called domain. It's pretty straightforward. It will walk you through it as to what records need to be added. So first part of adding the custom domain to your Office 365 instance is to go in and create a text record, which would then go, okay, you own the domain. The next part would be that if you wanted to have email addresses linked to your custom domain. So that involves a bit more setup. First, you need to make sure, once you've got your custom domain verified, that all the users that you created in the previous steps have an email alias or an email address created on their user account. You can do this quite straightforward. Go into the active user list on the Office admin panel, click on the user, and then you will see an option for email, and then you can go in and add those. So you want to get those email addresses added first. Once you've done that, you would then need to go back into your DNS panel and add an MX record. Now, the MX record is the bit where it tells the rest of the internet where to send your emails to, or which servers, i.e. to Microsoft servers. So you need to have those email addresses set up beforehand, before switching the MX record over. And of course, once you switch the MX record over to Office 365, your previous email system, whoever it happens to be with, normally a service provider of some sort, they would stop getting those emails. All the new emails would now be coming to your new Office 365 setup. If you wanted to be ultra organized, what you would do is you would migrate some of those emails beforehand into your newly created users. Microsoft provides some nice tools to do this. One of them, which we use regularly for our customers when we do migrations for them, is the IMAP migration tool. You would use the usernames and passwords, and you configure the Office 365 to go in and fetch and keep those emails synchronized while you make the MX change. Then normally 72 hours after you've done that change, the synchronization is complete, MX record is transferred over, and users will then be able to access those emails.
Great. And I was going to say so. Oh yeah. So Siv, what day of the week would you say that the best day of the week is to do a migration?
Well, you want to ideally have all your bulk of your data transferred across during the week. The MX record change, you would normally want to look to do it on a Friday.
Yeah.
The reason being the DNS servers on the internet take some time to propagate. Normal query time varies is between 24 to 72 hours. In our experience, it normally happens within 48 hours. But yeah, you never know with the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on the host of the domain and that as well. As Siv earlier pointed out there, we do provide sort of migration services. So if you not feel that that's something that you have the ability to do or need some help with, we do provide some various services where we can add the domain for you or set up the users, etc. And as we mentioned there, we like to set it up and try and get it done on a week, start it on a Friday, should we say? So that way, make sure you get all your work done, all the emails done, so you can let your customers know, or the people that you're speaking to, or your members of your charity. Then you can warn them in advance that emails will be down for a little while across the weekend. So hopefully by the time they come back on Monday, it's pretty easy peasy, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. And technically speaking, it's not down because the emails will either go to Office 365 or to your old mail provider. So they wouldn't go astray.
Yes.
Such, but yeah.
Just changing the direction of where they're going.
Exactly.
Great. So there's a couple of questions there that we thought might be interesting for you guys. Over to you, Lisa.
Brilliant, and thanks very much to you both, Joel and Siv, for a very insightful presentation and a couple of questions already. I'll dive straight in. For everyone who is attending the session now, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section, as we will answer them all the way until 3 p.m. So you've got some time here to ask, but I'll dive straight in. There was, obviously, we're conscious that there was a little bit of an issue with the sound. So Nusrat is asking whether there could be some further explanation about the domain and the DNS again. If you could, re-explain or summarize.
So we were speaking earlier on, for those that couldn't hear me clearly, apologies. What we were saying was that if you have your custom domain already, which most organizations do, if you have a website, that means you've got a domain name. And this is the fact of linking the domain to Office 365. So Microsoft knows that you own the domain. And when you create your usernames, for example, the previous steps where Joel would have outlined, you create Joe Blogs at, and then your organization name on Microsoft.com. You might want, your preference might be, you want to have Joe Blogs at organization dot whatever your domain, top level domain happens to be. If you want that to work, that's the reason you would add the custom domain to Office 365. And also if you wanted to receive emails within Office 365, that's the reason that you would also want to add the custom domain to it. I think I saw something earlier on in the chat, so I'll answer that query as well, which is, it is not necessarily hosting the website on Office 365. All you're doing is just linking the domain to Office 365 to verify that you own.
Yeah, that's a question we get a lot there, Siv, actually, where some organizations are worried that the hosting changes, but no, it's just the direction of the emails, right?
Yes, that's right. The MX record will redirect the email. The text record has no bearing on websites or anything like that at all. The text record is just purely so Microsoft can check that you own the domain.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks very much. And yeah, that answered Mark's questions as well. So that's great. Thank you, Siv. Moses is asking, how do you go about setting up a custom domain? I think it's the step before, probably.
If you mean purchasing the domain, you can go to the domain name provider of your choice and purchase the domain, GoDaddy, wherever. But if you haven't yet purchased the domain, the ideal thing would be to do is to purchase it from Microsoft themselves within the Office 365 platform. That way, you don't then have to go out of your way to the DNS panel to make the changes. The Office 365 setup administration will automatically make it. So it will say, oh, do you want to change your MX record? You would answer in the affirmative, and then it would automatically, because you've purchased the domain and they control the DNS servers, Microsoft will make those changes for you.
Brilliant. Yeah. Joel, did you want to add Something
No,
else to
oh,
add
just
on?
getting a very polite to that one. Yeah, no. But it's good to know
Yeah.
about the purchasing directly from Microsoft makes things a lot easier. In a perfect world, I guess we could all go that direction, but obviously there's many different domain owning websites and organizations out there, including
so some people have a preference as to their domain name as provider. One of the things you might want to do if you're a bigger organization is to, what they say is not to put all your eggs in one basket, which is to get your domain name service, your email service, everything from one provider. This goes back to the old days, or, if that service provider suffers a catastrophic failure, then I've lost my DNS, I've lost my email, I've lost everything. So sometimes people like to spread the different services over.
That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And and that's really helpful to know that it can be done directly through Microsoft as well. Well, thank you. The next question is about the changes that are happening in the Microsoft world now. Microsoft have announced an increase for their M365 subscriptions starting next month. Are we able to provide more details around what the increase will be for charities?
Sure. So we haven't received information regarding 365 subscriptions or Microsoft Cloud subscriptions in terms of a change of price from March. In fact, some of our prices changed recently ourselves before then as well, and many were actually reduced a little, at least for us anyway. But we haven't received information directly from Microsoft. In terms of, just hopefully we're talking about the same subject, but with Charity Digital Exchange, I briefly touched on it earlier, but as well as 365 subscriptions, we also provide on-premise licenses as well. And we're able to provide on-premise licenses at both a discount, but we also have a catalog which is called a donated catalog. And what that means is that Microsoft have donated the licenses to our partner at Techsoup, who work globally, and we're their representative here in the UK. So we're able to provide those licenses at a cost, but at really a much smaller admin fee. So some of you may have taken advantage of, say, some Office Standard licenses in the past, where instead of paying, I think the commercial rate for a standard Office license, if you went to somewhere like PC World or something, would probably be about £200 straight off the bat now sometimes. And we can provide those type of licenses currently at £27, for example. Now that particular offer is actually being retired after the 25th of March. So if your question is related to that, then that particular catalogue is being removed, but it's not for 365. But we do, like I said earlier, we do have our own prices for 365 subscriptions at the moment, which do include a further discount compared to going directly to Microsoft. And when purchasing from via us for the first year, you will receive like a price protection. So whatever the price is when you first purchase it, it will remain at that price for the first 12 months, and then from there it can go up or down. I've been working here long enough that the prices can go up and down, honestly.
And down.
Yeah, and down. Yeah, absolutely, and down. Some went down recently. So yeah, I'm always happy when I see prices going down.
Yeah, exactly. And to share that with everyone. And actually, thanks, Joel, because that ties up quite nicely with Mac's question, which was about, do we get our free business premium licenses through Charity Digital Exchange, or do we have to go direct to Microsoft? So if you can explain a little bit of the difference there.
Yeah, so the answer is you can do either, whichever is your preference. I mean, you're certainly welcome and to get them via ourselves. As I mentioned earlier as well, I mean, you can get them still for free via ourselves, but we can also be a first point of contact for you if you have any issues with the licenses as well. If there's a point where you need to grow your sort of license count, we can provide you more past the free cut off and still provide them at a further discount for you as well. So yeah, we can certainly provide those licenses for you, or you can get them straight directly from the Microsoft nonprofit portal if you prefer. That's completely up to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joel. And in the meantime, if other people want to ask questions, they're very welcome to. But I just wanted to ask you guys if there were some common questions that you were receiving from our charity audience that you felt would be relevant to share there on a weekly or daily basis. I know, because you already mentioned about the multi-factor authentication and the domain name. Are there other questions that you feel some people are a bit unsure of that you could answer?
I sort of envisage what people might have. So some people might end up with multiple domains and multiple email addresses. Us, for example, we have domains charity-digital, charity digital, exchange, charity. So if we were incorporating all that into the Office 365, you would call a tenant within the Office 365, you can add multiple custom domains to Office 365. So for whatever reason, if you had ended up with multiple different domains over the course of the organization going through this process, you can add all of those and you can have many email addresses as you need. You're not restricted by licenses for the number of email addresses that you have. So to use an earlier example, if there was joeblogs.savetheplanet.org, and then they have greenworld.org and all the other domains to it, you would just simply go into the Office 365 panel. And once you've got those custom domains verified, so you've got to do the verification for each domain that you own, you can then freely add those aliases to a single user. So one user can have n number of email addresses.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And just to elaborate on that a little bit, so as an example, there are many charities that have charities within the charity. So if you talk about perhaps like you could have a convention of churches, or perhaps like a scout, not an area of scouting groups, when each individual one has its own sort of domain. So you could have the 33rd Scouts and the 22nd Scouts. And what Siv is saying is that you can add all the domains of those separate entities within one 365 domain. And the great thing is when I showed earlier of where you create the users, and there's a little point there where you can actually change the domain to suit the person. So if they are from that particular area of the charity, you would use that specific domain which has been added to the account, or vice versa. So you can all have yourselves exist within one domain rather than having to set up multiple accounts, just getting validated multiple times as well. I mean, it may suit an organization to have separate 365 instances. It's each to their own, but there are many organizations out there who like just to have the one, and then have multiple domains, as Siv said, added, and then they can change the usernames from there.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually, because I suppose maybe some members of our audience today might be wondering, if they've changed name, for instance, and therefore domain names, they might have a couple of old pages or email addresses that are allocated to the old name. So it's good to know that without adding any further licenses or spending any more money, you can have all of your domain names under one panel. I guess it's easier as well to manage.
Email address. I mean, the other reason you may want to do it, so it's not just so you've got an email address, you've got the person's name usually, and then you have the domain part separated by the @ sign. The other reason which you may want to do is you might have multiple personas or multiple roles within an organization. So there could be a person called Joe Blogs, and he may also be responsible for maintenance. So instead of creating another user and assigning a license called maintenance at savetheplanet.org, that same user can then be given an additional email alias for maintenance.
Maintenance, yes, gotcha.
And not to complicate things, another feature that I'm gonna explain to you is you also have the feature of creating shared mailboxes. So you don't end up losing one of your licenses for it. So an example of this might be, you might be a church and you have an email address called bookings. So rather than creating bookings as a individual user and losing one of your licenses or paying for one of these licenses, you can create a shared mailbox, and the shared mailbox can be called bookings, and again, have multiple aliases added to it, but doesn't consume a license. The users accessing that shared mailbox will consume a license, but they would already be given licenses for their own purposes.
For their own, yeah.
Anyway, so this way you could then create one single mailbox called bookings and give 5 people access to it. They might be working on Monday, one person works on Tuesdays, and so forth. So yeah, that's another feature.
That's a very, very good features, because I guess all organizations have at least probable office or info at, and then dedicated first name with the domain name. So that's really good to know. And see, does that work for all of the different levels, so that the E3 and the E5, or
the shared mailbox, as long as you have a tenancy within Office 365, you're able to create shared mailboxes. As I said, the only stipulation is the user accessing that shared mailbox needs to be licensed within the Office.
Yes, absolutely. Brilliant. All right. Wow, brilliant. Thanks very much, Joel and Siv. That's really insightful. I'm doing a last round and last call for any more questions. Hopefully we want to make sure that you've enjoyed the session as much as I did, and that you've learned some interesting features or tips and tricks. So please don't hesitate to pop over your questions for another 5 minutes. I don't know if you wanted to add something, Joel.
Yeah, I mean, some things often get overlooked, and just to think of our audience as well, with various different levels. Just thinking about one of the really great features of going to 365 is its flexibility. And to elaborate on that is, there's many times in an organization in the past where you might have purchased a desktop license such as Office, like a standard, which would be Office 2019 or 2016, and it could go on a device, and you possibly could lose that license in one way or another if a person were to leave an organization, or something like that. It could go astray. The great thing about 365, or at least one of my favorite features, is that you can create all the user accounts that you want within your admin portal. And as soon as, say, Joe Bloggs was to leave the organization and he's got a license assigned to him, you don't need to that's not goodbye to that license. You can just simply unassign the license. And then if Joe Bloggs has got his replacement in already, you just create a new user account for them, and then just assign that spare license that you've just got from Joe Bloggs. And it's really simple, but feature like that, but it's something that wasn't really been able to be done effectively before sort of the creation of 365. And I think it's a really great feature to stay on top of licenses that you have, ensure that you are provisioning the correct amount as well. I know this was a discussion in the past where it's really important that you only request the licenses that you intend to use.
Yes.
Rather than stockpile them, because it could end up costing you more money. So instead of, if you say I want 20 business standard licenses, but I only plan to use 15 of them right now, those 5 that are unassigned, you're still being charged for them. So it's good to, I've kind of gone off on a whim here, but if you stay on top of your user account and licenses, it's great where you can just flip, reassign and assign as you need to, rather than having to cancel, then repurchase again for someone else. Exactly.
And also, Joel, I think you mentioned in the second episode that Microsoft was also having a look at the average usage of its licenses. So if they've noticed that you're not using everything, that there might be some consequences there.
So it's kind of related to one of the questions from our audience earlier with the free licenses. So there's a rule where Microsoft, anyone who's using free licenses, there's a rule put in place by Microsoft that an organization must be utilizing at least 85% of those licenses that they have. So they've got to be assigned, being used on a pretty regular basis. But if you've got say if it's just a very small charity, a micro charity, and there's 2 of you using Business Premium, but you've requested the full 10 licenses, they're just kind of sitting there stockpiling. So it'll be your responsibility to bring the license count down to exactly what you need. And then if you do need more inboxes or more users come, you then just increase that count later as and when you need it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're right. I think it's good to remind us of that. One last question that got in. So somebody who's got Business Premium free licenses, and they're wondering what the benefits will be of setting up a custom domain and migrating their emails to 365. And they're wondering whether there are any costs associated with this.
Okay. There is no cost associated with it. So as part of your Office 365, Microsoft is giving you a 50 gig mailbox that you can have, and also archiving features. So you're not paying anything additional at all. These are all part of your business premium package. And one of the reasons that you want to do it is you're probably paying somebody else for email addresses and hosting mailboxes now. So straight away, you get that cost back. So you can, once you migrate it over and you're on Office 365, it's in one place. The second is Microsoft is pretty big in terms of the servers that they manage, the reliability, and also the availability in the IT world. So if you are with a service provider who's based in the UK and they were to have a disaster for whatever reason, and much as they're backed up to the hilt, you may suffer downtime. I'm not saying with Microsoft you're not going to suffer any downtime, but because of the size they have enough equipment and data centers and availability and technicians on board to fix any issues that arise. One of the main reasons is they make the software. So if anybody knows how to fix it,
yes, we want to hope so.
Yeah, so they would fix it. Just to go back to Joel's point about Office, if you're having an Office standard license and the laptop is tied to the laptop, one other feature of Office 365, which Business Premium, which sometimes gets overlooked, is that you're able to deploy Office onto 5 machines, but provided they're used by the same user. So it doesn't mean you buy one Business Premium and you install it and let 5 of your employees use it. It basically means you work at home, so you might have a home machine, but there's a machine that's given to you purely for work purpose, so you can deploy it onto that. You may use the iPad occasionally for work, so you can deploy Office onto your iPad. And then you might have another machine in a meeting room somewhere in your organization. You can deploy it to that. As long as the user is licensed, they can use the Office package that you deploy to.
Yeah, that is really good to know. Especially as we are now hybrid working and using different different devices wherever we are, and I guess also very important for some of our audience members who have maybe staff going going on site, going to meet with beneficiaries. I think it's good to know that so long as it's one users, they can be deployed on different devices. I guess phones as well. Yeah, as well. Yeah. Ooh, okay. And the other question we had from the same person earlier was about 50 gigabytes of emails. What if they have more than 50 gigabytes? So the sort of basic, I think it's the basic load. What if they have more?
Wow. If you have more, then you're obviously being a very busy person. Joking aside, you've got your 50 GB, which is your mailbox, your active mailbox, as they call it. And then Microsoft also give you an archive mailbox. So you can then set up policies within Office 365 to say, oh, look, everything over 2 years or 3 years, move into the archive. And in the archive, I forget how much space that they give you, but they give you another additional, I think it's 40 to 50 gig, but they call it it's not on a premium storage space, so it might not be as fast. But once you start looking for those emails, it will load up and then serve it to you.
Yeah, I certainly have experience in that when using our archives. As you go further down the archive, it does slow down a little bit, as you say, because it uses different, but that's fine. I do believe that some of the more enterprise licenses might give you more space than 50 gig, possibly like E3. I think E3 and E5 will give you more with that as well. And I think you can get additional add-ons directly from Microsoft where you can increase mailbox sizes as well. You pay an extra couple of pound a month. I don't know the exact figures. It's not something that I've often come across in terms of inbox increases.
It's quite hard to hit that limit. You've got to mostly it tends to happen when roles have merged. So you have different organizations where 3 or 4 roles have kind of merged, and then they would take mails from each of those roles, mailboxes, and whack them all into one. That's where I've seen it happen.
Or like an info inbox that's been given a user license and it's just been used as the same contact email for years and years, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And the last question from Diana, and she's asking whether there's any indication about the cost difference between upgrading before the change or upgrading after the change. So I think, Diana, correct me if I'm wrong, you're referring to the Microsoft on-premise changes because there's no there's no Microsoft 365 change for the time being, if I understood correctly. The change after March 25. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that's back on the on-premise thing.
The on-premise, yeah.
So yeah, so in terms of cost differences, I mean, I'm going to give you, for example, Office Standard. So if you are going on-prem, Office Standard is currently £27 plus the VAT at the moment. After the 25th of March, you're going to be looking at probably just under £200 per license for on-prem. So it's at that point where, we're encouraging people ourselves either to get as many licenses as you can now, think about the future, or if after that point, that might be a point where, do you consider moving to the cloud? I mean, if you're paying £200 for one Office license, there are plenty of 365 licenses which will long-term hit a similar cost, but the features will be far more up-to-date as well. I mean, 365 is always the most up-to-date version of itself, whereas the on-premise licenses, the support stops after a few years. It's also attached to a specific device, so if anything happens to that device, you lose that license as well.
Exactly, I was about to say, yeah.
And there comes that flexibility again, I'm telling you. So yeah, if you go over to 365 and your device becomes defunct, you get your new device in and then log in with your 365 account to with your new device, and there's pretty much no changes there really. There isn't any issues of having to install a license, purchase a new ones again.
Absolutely. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Joel. Thank you. And one last question now from Alana. What would we need to do if we have users set up with the onmicrosoft.com domain name and subsequently set up a custom domain name? How does that work? Should they keep the users where they are? Should they look to put the users everywhere under the same domain name?
Sure. So the standard practice when you do this is once you've added your custom domain. So if you think about it in a logical step, you've got Office 365 Business Premium now, and you know that you want to move your mailboxes over, or you want to move mail into Office 365. So you would then straight away add your custom domain. Now, if for whatever reason, they're all on Microsoft domain, and then you've decided after the fact that you want to bring the custom domain in. Once you bring the custom domain in, what you can do is on the back end, you can select the custom domain as your default. To begin with, it will be on Microsoft domain, which is the default. Once you add the custom domain, there is an option once you select the domain to set that as a default. Now, any subsequent users created from that point onwards will have the username on the new custom domain. And there's a further option within Office 365 to go and recreate custom domain usernames for everybody else. And then you standardize across your organization so everybody has. It's easier to remember for people the username if you're using your own company or your own organization's domain rather than on Microsoft domain. And the standard practices also matches your email address. So if you're signing up for accounts, or if you're signing up for things outside in the wild internet, you don't have to then think, oh, did I use on Microsoft for this or this for that? You're consistently using a single email address.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think following on from that, I've seen another question from Alana. I think you agree there, Siv. So if a user's previously used onmicrosoft.com and then you've added the custom domain, that is essentially a new inbox or a new user account for themselves, isn't it?
No, it would be the same account. It would be the same account.
Oh, okay.
The same account. So mails will flow to the same mailbox. So far as Office 365 is concerned, it's one mailbox, one username with multiple, multiple personas or multiple, I don't want to use the word identity because that's what username is, but multiple aliases. There you go.
Aliases. Okay. So then it asks a question. She wouldn't need to change their login details or anything like that.
Not at all. Not at all. Unless you want to. Unless you want to make everybody's username under the custom domain. As I said, you can go in and get the system to do that, but you've got complete flexibility over how you want to do it. Some organizations like to have it as a standard. So I don't know if you're say 100 user organization and you have, you might need to do it for compliance. So you know what, everyone needs to have the same format. So most organizations, you would have probably come across first name dot last name at domain. That's the format that they follow to keep consistency across.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, well, thank you, Siv. And hopefully that answered both of your questions, Alana. Somebody else is asking whether Microsoft is buying back the on-prem licenses when we migrate to the cloud.
No.
I'm afraid not. It depends. It depends on the type of licenses that you have, and also what you're moving to the cloud for. So what we spoke about within the context of business premium, no. But if you're a bigger organization, you might have on-prem Windows servers and etc. There is something called a hybrid benefit, but that's solely down to Microsoft and how they would implement it. And the rules keep changing around to it. Best case scenario, what tends to happen is if you have SQL Server licenses already, as an example, and you're trying to get a SQL service from the Azure side, you would get a small discount, or you would get a discount because you already own the license and you're bringing that license to the cloud, hosting in Azure. But sadly for premium, it's not the case. You don't get
so basically, it applies to things like servers rather than saying your Office standard licenses or things like that. It's more from a SQL server point of view.
From a server, from an Azure. Okay, from an Azure point of view. Okay, gotcha. Well, great. Thanks very much, Joel and Siv, for all your help and answering all of the questions. It's been a very insightful sessions, and we're hoping that all of you have enjoyed it. We are also inviting you to attend, to have a look at our two previous webinars, the part one, how to choose the best Microsoft 365 subscription, and the second part, which was how to get validated. So you can access them on demand. The link is in the chat section as well, but you can have access to them on our website. We are hoping that you have found this insightful. If you have any questions, obviously you can reach out to our customer service team, and Joel will be probably the one answering you.
Maybe.
Maybe if he's in a good mood.
If you're lucky.
But yeah, no, we're really very excited to have put this webinar part for this 3-part webinar for you, and we're hoping that we can create more. Basically depends on the feedback that we receive, and obviously we will be very grateful if you can spare a couple of minutes just after leaving the session to tell us how you found it. I mean, the last question from Moses was about why do we like to choose Zoom over Teams?
I bet you can answer that one, Lisa.
Can we answer that? Well, to be fair, we've been using Zoom before Teams had a specific feature for webinars, so we've been sticking to Zoom really, because we've been doing webinars for the past since 2019, I think, and that was before the pandemic and before Microsoft Teams developed the webinar feature. So yes, we stuck to Zoom, and we find it's quite intuitive and quite good for people to join and ask questions. So I hope this answered your question, Moses.
And we certainly use Teams every day. I know I do, like Teams calls anyway. So we use a bit of everything.
Exactly. we're multitask. But yeah, well, great. Thanks very much, guys, for joining us today. We hope you had a very good time enjoying it as well. And we look forward to seeing you again at any of our webinars.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.